Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
Use a pry bar or a large flat-bladed screwdriver to remove the hubcap. Just going to slide it under the edge. Put that aside. Take a breaker bar and a 21mm socket and loosen the lug nuts while the car is still on the ground. Raise and support the vehicle. Now you can finish removing the wheel. These lug nuts are pretty loose, so I'm just going to use the socket, take them off. I'm removing the last lug nut. I'm just going to hold on to the wheel so it doesn't fall off. Take it right off. Start by removing the two caliper pin bolts, one on the bottom, one on the top. There's a 14mm. Actually broke free without having to use the mallet. If it's tight, you can take a mallet, just tap it, break it free. Just squeeze the caliper a little bit by pulling it out. Should slide right off the pads. Take a bungee cord, just hang it up and out of the way. So I'm going to use a small pry bar, or you can use a flat-bladed screwdriver. You need to pop them away from the brake rotor out of the caliper bracket. Remove the caliper bracket bolts. There's two at the back, one on the top, one on the bottom. They're 14mm. Be in there pretty tight. Use the box wrench and a mallet to break them free. Gonna get the bottom one loose and work on the top one. So they're broken free. You can switch to a ratcheting wrench. Get it pretty loose. Just gonna remove the bottom one with my fingers. Put that aside to reuse it. And get the top one out. Pull the bracket out. Bolt out. This car is missing a rubber plug that goes in the rotor here. The rubber plug is so that you can access the parking brake mechanism to release it. So somebody just put some duct tape over it. I'm going to peel it off. Inside here is the mechanism. I'm going to try to pull it off first though, because sometimes it's loose enough you don't need to release it. Parking brake's not on, it is spinning free. I can spray some rust penetrant around the hub. A little bit in here. Take our dead blow mallet. I'm going to hit around the edge here to try to break it free. Sometimes you'll get lucky. These might come off, but they usually get stuck on the parking brake shoes. You need to release the adjustment. It's very hard to see right now, but through this opening, it normally has a rubber plug on it. It had some duct tape on it. We removed it. Take a flat-bladed screwdriver. I'm going to spin it. Try to grab the little tabs on there and spin it up. It's like a little wheel. Make sure I'm going the right way. You can check. Oh, see, I went the wrong way. It locked it. So it's going to actually be spun down. You basically just have to spin that wheel down and keep retracting the parking brake shoes in so the rotor will come free. When you adjust it, you're going through the rotor and into this hole, and then you're pushing down on it. And that spins the parking brake shoes in to release them. To cut down on some of the brake dust that's in here, I'm going to take some brake parts cleaner before I remove all the hardware in the shoes and clean it out. All right, to remember how this goes back together, I'm going to use my phone, take a couple pictures of it. I'm going to take some needle nose pliers and remove these two springs up top that are holding the brake shoes on. Pull this adjuster piece out. Put the spring back on it just the way I found it so I don't forget how that went together. So now the shoes are just on these little retaining springs and the hardware that's underneath them. These are usually pretty soft springs. They're kind of keyed, so you can turn them by just kind of compressing them. Sometimes you have to reach in the back and actually hold, they call it a nail that they're held onto. You can actually hold the back of it so it doesn't get pushed through. These pliers in here. Push it down and attempt to turn it. Oops. Put those springs aside. The shoe should come off of this. Grab this little washer too. Slide this down. This is the auto adjuster. That side, so I don't lose it. I'm going to repeat the same on this side, remove that little spring and retainer. So you can actually take this is, they call it a nail because it looks like a nail. You can actually take this out, put that aside. Do the same exact thing. There is a tool for this, but there's actually not a lot of clearance in here. Get the special tool in here to push these in. So the pliers work pretty well. Lower this all down. Take the little nail out. That's interesting. This one has a little special taper to it, so that's the other side. So now this is your parking brake cable. So let's try pushing this way. I've got one part of the needle nose on the end of the cable and one on this brake shoe arm. Pop it this way. It almost worked. Brake shoes are in good shape. We're not going to replace them. If you did have to replace them, you would reuse this arm. This is what gets pulled when you push down the parking brake pedal, and it spreads these shoes out inside to lock the brake rotor. To replace it, you'd spread apart this clip and slide it off this pin. Then you'd swap this over to the new brake shoe, put this clip back on, and squeeze it back together. That's really the only major thing you have to do. Other than that, you just replace the same hardware that we already have and put it back together the same way you took it apart, which is what we're going to do now. So I need to get the e-brake cable back into this holder here. I'm going to try some locking pliers. I don't want to crush the spring, so I'm just going to set them so they don't pop off. these now. I need to attach this spring that goes on the back side. It's a retaining spring. I'm going to get it into place. So this rounded part of the shoe is going to fit on this pivot point here. This nail or retainer for the brake shoes has this bend in it, so it's offset. So it comes through here, and then it's offset so that it can go around this and sit in here. I'm going to install it from the back. Just hold it in place. Slide this assembly up. Sometimes you have to hold the part from the back. A little nail to slide this little cup in there. Take our retaining springs, put that over the little retaining part. And try to line up the slot on the top of the pin through that wide opening, and then you turn it to lock it. You may be able to use the opening in the hub here to help go through and set up the retaining spring. Just want to make sure that this is pushed in and turned so that it's locked in place. The inside of the opposite brake shoe is the same type of little hook part. I'm going to hook the spring on to the inside of that one, and then hook it onto the inside of this one. Put the shoe into place and attach the retaining spring and nail. Take these pliers. Get that one hooked in place. So this is the adjuster that when it turns out, pushes the shoes out. So you adjust the tension on the shoes. It also automatically adjusts as they wear. This spins nice and frilly, so we don't need to clean it up. But I need to install it in place before I get too far. It sits right in here. It's gonna sit, pull this shoe up, and it's gonna sit just like that. You put the other side, the nail goes through the back. You can see it better on this side. Make sure that this little retaining tab goes into this little hole over here. Put that in place. Reinstall the spring and the seat, just like the other side. This plate here with the spring, put the spring back on it. Slides in to the parking brake arm and shoe. Just separate this one a little bit apart. Just get it lined up. It fits together like that. These springs have a hook. The hook is going to go around this portion here, and they have this end here is going to slide into the opening to the bottom of the brake shoe right here. That in place. Grab them with pliers, pull them down and over that pin. So just make sure that that shoe fits in that slot and compresses that spring, because these two shoes should be resting on this pivot point here. So just making sure everything's connected, so all of our parking brake hardware is now in the correct place. Install the rotor backwards. Take brake parts cleaner and clean off the oil that comes on these so they don't rust while they're shipped. flip it over. Make sure you install it in a way that this hole lines up with one of the openings here so you can adjust the parking brake. So I'm taking the caliper off of our bungee cord. I'm going to take one of the old brake pads, take a C-clamp, and now what I'm going to do is gently compress the caliper, push the piston into the body. And that way when we put our new pads in, it'll slide right together. Just gonna rest the caliper like that. Take a brake parts cleaner, clean it off. Reinstall our caliper bracket. Get the top one caught first, makes it a little bit easier. I can install the bottom one. It's a little easier because it just hangs on the top one. Reach in behind here. Get that bracket lined up. Use the 14mm ratcheting wrench to snug these up. Install our new pads. Just take some brake parts cleaner. Make sure they're nice and clean. Brake caliper grease on the ears of them. Inside and outside pads are the same. I'm going to start with the inside pad. Place it in the bottom clip. Push it up into the top clip. Snaps into place. Do the same for the outside one. So we're just kind of following the curve of the pad too. They're contoured. So the wider part is going to match up with the wider outside part of the rotor. Same with the inside part. Just push them down into the clips. Squeeze them together. Place the caliper back in place. Reinstall the bolts. Tighten these up. They'll get tight, I will stop. I torque the caliper bolts, 46 foot-pounds. You need to adjust the drag on the parking brake. You can turn this so you can see the adjuster, and then you can put your screwdriver in. Just catch the little gears in the wheel just right. So now that's how you'd adjust it so that it's actually really tight. It's holding the brake rotor. So now you know where the limit is. You want to back it off a little bit by turning it back down. Eventually, if you touch the parking brake pedal, it would self-adjust out, but this way it just gets it closer right away. So now I'm going to reach in and turn it down a little bit. So what it's dragging on right now is just the brake pads, but that should spin freely enough. And of course, when you hit the parking brake pedal, it should come out and lock the rear wheels. Important to note, these lug nuts have a taper. The taper meets the wheel, matches the inside of the wheel. Don't install them with the flat side like this, that is incorrect. Install them with the taper to the wheel. It helps locate the wheel on the lug nut stud. I'm just using the socket and ratchet to bring these down snug before I put the car on the ground. I torque the lug nuts to 76 foot-pounds. Going in a cross pattern. Reinstall the hubcap. Gonna line up the opening for the valve stem with the valve stem on the wheel. Just push it in place. Before we start the car, just gonna gently press the brake pedal down, not all the way to the floor, maybe about a quarter of the way, and just pump it. And this will bring the brake caliper piston out to meet the pads because we compress it. And you'll start to feel it get more solid as it pumps up.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.